There's a kind of ache that doesn't scream. It doesn't come with heartbreak or betrayal. It arrives slowly, without warning, and settles into your life like a low fog. It's the ache of not knowing if you were ever truly loved. Not in the loud movie script ways, not in the words, not in the gestures you were taught to expect, but in the spaces in between, where someone stood beside you without explanation, where they said nothing but stayed. And you wonder, was it care? Or convenience? Was I remembered? Or replaced? Carl Jung once said that when two souls meet, if there is any reaction, both are transformed. But not every transformation comes with fireworks. Some arrive like a soft shift in gravity. Some you don't notice until years later when you find yourself thinking of them in the quiet. We are trained to recognize love by volume. The louder, the clearer, the more obvious, the better. But the psyche doesn't work that way. It leaves signs, not billboards. And here's what no one tells you. Real love can hide. It can wear silence like a second skin. It can move through your life like background music you never noticed until it stopped. Maybe someone was always there, listening when you didn't know they were. Maybe they remembered what you forgot. Maybe they cared for you in ways you couldn't see, because you were looking for something louder, something that looked more like the love you thought you needed. This isn't about reinterpreting every past connection. It's about understanding that love isn't one thing. It's not always tender or clear or even conscious. Sometimes love is clumsy. Sometimes it's afraid. Sometimes it doesn't know how to introduce itself, so it shows up quietly, hoping to be recognized. If you've ever found yourself replaying a moment over and over, not because it hurt, but because it felt unfinished, this is the ache I'm speaking of. The ache of a gesture half noticed. A look you can't explain. A goodbye that never sounded final. This is the ache of unspoken love. And maybe, just maybe, it was love, not the kind you were trained to recognize, but the kind that waits in the background, the kind that never had the courage to say your name out loud, and yet still meant it. Have you ever met someone who made you feel like you were remembering, not meeting, like something in you turned toward them before your thoughts had a chance to catch up? Jung believed this kind of connection wasn't random. He wrote that each of us carries an unconscious soul image within us, a blueprint of the qualities we yearn for, reject, fear, and deeply long to integrate. He called it the anima if you're masculine, the animus if you're feminine. But beyond gender, it's the part of your psyche that knows what you're missing, what you hunger for in order to become whole. And here's the sign no one talks about. Sometimes the person who truly loves you doesn't just flatter your image, they reflect your essence. They mirror the part of you you've forgotten or pushed away or never dared to see. They make you feel more like yourself, but strangely also more exposed. That's because this kind of love doesn't stay on the surface. It stirs the unconscious. It draws out parts of you that have been asleep. It mirrors back your potential, your softness, your chaos, your light, your shadow. This love rarely looks perfect. It often comes with friction, resistance, even fear. Because when someone mirrors your soul, they don't just comfort you, they challenge the masks you've built to survive. It may start small. They remember what you thought they'd forget. They see what you weren't ready to show. They offer presence when you least expect it and least feel you deserve it. And when they look at you, it doesn't feel like admiration, it feels like recognition. But here's the painful truth. Sometimes we push that love away, we question it, we sabotage it. Not because it's wrong, but because it feels too right, too vulnerable, too unfamiliar. We expect love to come in the language we understand. Consistency, reassurance, praise. But when it comes in the form of depth, reflection, or radical presence, we might not know what to do with it. Yet if they stayed, if they kept showing up not just for your light, but for your mess, your silence, your confusion, then you were seen. And being seen that deeply, that is love. Even if it didn't say the words. Even if it left too soon. Even if it scared both of you. You may not have called it love at the time, but now maybe you're ready to name it. Because sometimes someone truly loves you by holding up a mirror, not to who you were or who you pretended to be, but to the person you were always meant to become. Some people love with softness, others with songs. But the ones you often overlook, the ones who loved you without knowing how to say it, They loved you through armor. And if you're not careful, you'll miss them entirely. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of ourselves we hide, not just from the world, but from our own understanding. It doesn't only hold rage, fear, or shame. It can hold tenderness too, compassion, the desire to protect, the ache to connect. Because sometimes love gets buried in places it was never allowed to live. There are people who grew up believing affection was weakness. That emotion meant danger. That vulnerability made you breakable. And so they hardened, they became competent, capable, controlled. And when they loved, they didn't smile and say it. They teased you, argued with you, kept their distance, stayed late but never explained why, remembered your words but never repeated them, watched you from a distance they didn't know how to close. It's easy to miss that kind of love, to call it cold, to name it as disinterest. But here's what to look for. They showed up when you didn't ask. They did the practical things, filled your tank, checked your tires, walked you to the door. They asked questions sideways like jokes because asking sincerely felt too naked. They listened more than they spoke, and when you were in pain, they stayed close even when they didn't have the right words. Especially when they didn't have the right words. This is the love that doesn't live in gestures, it lives in gestures misread. You won't find it in candlelight or eloquence. You'll find it in the way that they remembered that you hate being asked too many questions. In the way they stood beside you at your worst, not to fix you, but to make sure you weren't alone in it. And it's not because they were too proud to love you in other ways. It's because their love had no script, because it was shaped in silence. In rooms where nobody said I love you, but everyone kept the lights on until you came home. You might only recognize this love after they're gone. You might look back and see all the ways they tried, clumsily, cautiously, to tell you that you mattered. Not with words, with presence, with protection, with persistence. So if you're wondering whether you were loved by someone who never told you, ask yourself this. Did they make your life easier when it got hard? Did they stay close when you tried to push them away? Did they love you in the language they were never taught to speak? If the answer is yes, then don't make the mistake of measuring their love by the volume of their voice. Some people love from the shadows not because their love is weak, but because it's too deep, too sacred to risk breaking. There's a kind of love that doesn't hold you where you are, but dares you into who you could be. It doesn't calm you, it confronts you. Carl Jung called this individuation, the deep and often uncomfortable journey of becoming whole. And sometimes it's love that cracks the shell. Not the love that soothes your wounds, but the love that reveals them. The one that makes you uncomfortable in your own half-life. The one that refuses to let you sleep through your potential. This love might not feel gentle. It may arrive as conflict. It may come with friction, but underneath it is a sacred intention to call forth what you've kept buried beneath your survival mechanisms. Think of the person who didn't let you keep making excuses. The one who held up a mirror and didn't let you look away. The one who asked questions you didn't want to answer because they saw something you hadn't yet dared to claim. Sometimes they loved you enough to walk away. Not to punish you, but because their absence gave you the space to grow. It's the paradox of transformation. Love that leaves can still be love that liberates. As Khalil Gibran wrote, even as love crowns you, so shall it crucify you. Even as it is for your growth, so is it for your pruning. This love isn't comfortable. It won't praise you endlessly or pretend you're finished growing. It loves you through evolution. It loves you into your future self. And it can be painful, because becoming whole means dying to what's false. It means outgrowing identities you've clung to. It means breaking patterns, risking loneliness, facing your fears. But here's how you'll know it was love. You'll remember who you were before them and realize you're no longer that person. You'll feel the fire they lit still burning in your voice, in your choices, in your courage. They didn't rescue you, they didn't carry you, they didn't fix you. But they saw the version of you no one else saw, the one you were too afraid to believe in. And they held that vision long enough for you to rise toward it. That's love, not the kind that leaves you where it found you. The kind that brings a mirror, a storm, and a threshold. It may have looked like distance. It may have felt like disruption, but it was devotion. The rare kind that chooses your becoming over their comfort. And if someone like that crossed your path even just once, they left you changed, not because they stayed, but because they showed you that love, when it's true, doesn't just make you feel safe, it makes you real. Not all love enters with fireworks. Some love arrives quietly like a shift in the air. A message sent at the exact moment you were falling apart. A conversation that echoed a thought you hadn't said aloud. A presence that returns again and again for no reason it can explain and no reason you can forget. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, when the outer world and your inner world collide with such precise, meaningful timing that you begin to feel something greater is at work. And in love, these moments are not accidents, they're signals, whispers from the soul. This kind of love doesn't announce itself, it doesn't post about you. It doesn't arrive with perfect clarity. Instead, it brushes against your life like a thread you didn't know you were following. They appear just before you give up. They call when your silence turns heavy. They say something ordinary that lands like a truth you've been aching to hear. You can't explain it, but something in you recognizes it. The pull, the quiet rightness. The feeling that your path and theirs was somehow written in the same sentence, even if you arrived at different chapters. This isn't fantasy. This is how the psyche speaks, through timing, through tension, through patterns so exact they defy logic. Jung didn't believe in coincidence. He believed in meaning that speaks before we're ready to understand it. There's a tale from Japan of the red thread of fate. Invisible, unbreakable, tied around the ankles of those destined to meet. The thread may tangle, it may stretch across years, silence or distance, but it never breaks. And when you finally meet, something clicks, as if your soul has arrived somewhere it never knew it missed. You may not trust this kind of love. You might call it irrational. You might walk away, thinking it's too strange to be real. But then the signs return. The music, the names, the dreams, the feeling. As if something somewhere is asking you to look again. Simone Weil once said, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." The deepest signs of love are not always expressed. They're revealed through attention, subtle, soulful, often missed by the eyes, but never forgotten by the heart. You don't need confirmation, you don't need evidence. You only need to ask, did it change you? Did something in you soften? Did a wound begin to close, not through their promises, but through their presence? If so, then maybe it was love, not the kind that shows up on time, but the kind that arrives when the soul calls it in. The kind that leaves no proof, only echoes. And if someone comes to mind as you hear this, it may not mean they were meant to stay, but they were meant to arrive, and sometimes that's enough. The world tells us love must stay to be real, that if someone leaves, they never truly cared. That silence is the same as indifference. That distance always means detachment. But the truth is more complicated, and much more human. Sometimes the greatest love is the one that doesn't get expressed the way you wanted, but lived in a way you didn't understand. Carl Jung once wrote, "Where love rules, there is no will to power." Real love doesn't try to own you. It doesn't need to be seen to exist. And sometimes it lets go because holding on would have meant asking you to shrink. There's a story from Persian lore of Layla and Majnun. He loved her so deeply, so irrationally, he retreated into the wilderness to preserve it. Their love was never consummated, never celebrated, but it outlived both of them. Because some love doesn't need to be fulfilled to be true. It only needs to be honored. That's the kind of love we rarely talk about, the love that remains when the person doesn't. The love that still shapes you years later. The love that disappeared outwardly but never left you inwardly. Maybe they walked away not because they didn't care, but because they didn't know how to stay. Or because you needed space to find your own voice. Or because their silence was the only way they knew how to keep you safe from the parts of themselves they were still fighting. And maybe you've done this too. Maybe you've loved someone more than you could say and left in a way that looked like abandonment but felt like mercy. Love like this isn't linear. It's not a story with clean endings, it's a presence. A thread woven into who you are. It lives in the way you speak softer now. The way you listen more carefully. The way you hold space for others without needing to explain why. If someone comes to mind right now, someone whose name still stirs something tender in you, even after all this time, that's not sentimentality. That's a sign. It means the love never left. Maybe they're gone. Maybe it was never mutual. Maybe they never said the words, but they reached you. They changed you. And part of you is still carrying that love, even if it's unreturned. Not all love is meant to last in form. But the deepest kind leaves something behind, a strength, a softness, a stillness. And sometimes the real proof of love is not in what was said, but in what still remains long after the story ended. If someone came to mind, send this to them, or say nothing, just feel it. And thank the love that shaped you quietly, invisibly, profoundly. Because love like that never leaves. It just waits, softly, silently, until you're ready to name it.